Hello there, my name is Sixo, but more on that later because, folks, I think Hasbro might be trying to overcharge us. Alright, look, I apologise for nothing because you simply cannot post a picture of this guy online without someone making that joke, so in this case, it may as well be me. In any case, I got my hands on a copy of Legacy Overcharge, and I'm kind of bizarrely intrigued by this guy and how it holds up versus the previous Blitzwing version of the mold. Not to mention the original eHobby G1 Overcharge, which was of course a homage to the Diaclone toy that started it all in the early 80s. But we're going to get into all of that today thanks to the fine folks at Transforverse.eu, a European Transformers site with tons of robots in disguise in stock and available for pre-order right now. There's an affiliate link down in the description below, so you should absolutely go and give them a look. If you live in Europe, they've got some great prices, amazing shipping, and if you use the link that I provided, you get the occasional discount as well, so what's not to like? Anyway, I've got to say that I was initially quite skeptical about this guy because it is a leader class repaint, and repaints of this kind really need to justify their existence at those higher price points in my opinion. And now that it's here in front of me, I do really like what I'm seeing here. The colour scheme actually works surprisingly well, and it does feel quite different to Blitzwing. I mean, the first thing to acknowledge here is that he does have a newly tooled head. Now, you may not have realised this because it's quite similar to Blitzwing actually, but completely new tooling, and it does make for quite a difference in hand. And it's quite odd because the differences are really not that apparent until you actually get them side by side, right? So I think they could have just not done this and nobody would have noticed, but the effort is appreciated nonetheless. It's a really nice sculpt too, and I love this shiny blue, but I hate that little molded line across the eye visor there. It absolutely kills it. Now, initially I thought this guy was going to look a little bit drab because it's all kind of flat grey, but actually these little shiny silver painted sections do kind of pick it out a little bit, and you've got some little red highlights as well, which is nice. You've got some more silver on areas such as the shoulders, and indeed on the hip flaps. And don't get me wrong, it's not like so obvious or anything, but it does pick it out a little bit. I think it helps that you get this little pop of yellow on the sides of the legs. Even if that's not intentional, it's a little dash of colour, which is kind of appreciated. Really though, it's that beautiful blue, the head sculpt, which makes all the difference here in terms of the palette on offer. And if you put the blue sword in his hand, then you get that little electric pop as well, so that definitely helps. And I have to say, I do like the colour scheme a lot more in hand than I thought I was going to, but it is a bit of an oddity as well, especially as it really does not resemble the classic Overcharge toy like at all. Like the silver is completely out of left field, the green is a lot more drab and kind of darker and a little bit more kind of bluey green as well, weirdly, versus the original quite earthy green, and just overall there's a lot of difference here. Now, my classic Overcharge doesn't have the stickers applied and the guns are still in the box as well, but really can see it's that kind of main off-white colour that is the huge variance between these two here, and it's quite strange. And I've seen it suggested that the new toy is actually based on the original toy's card art, which makes sense when you look at it because you can see that that has green thighs as well, whereas the toy itself has black thighs and the new one has green thighs, so that's probably the source of it all, but still quite a strange lineup here. I do think it's a bit of a shame they didn't include the orange that you can see on the original's head crest. Also interesting to note that the new guy is firmly a Decepticon, where the original came with multiple faction stickers and you could actually choose its allegiance, which was kind of cool. But anyway, look, the changes versus the original really don't bother me personally. I'm at a point where I don't need every new toy to be super slavish to something that came in the past, especially not when it's as niche as today's subject. And objectively, I do like the new colour scheme. Yeah, it's a little bit drab, but actually in hand it kind of works. It also, by the way, really sets it apart from Blitzwing, and where the newly tooled head doesn't really make that much difference, the colour scheme certainly does, and I think really what you have here is a straight up choice. If you only want to get one version of this mold, which do you like the look of more? It's pretty much that simple. And in that regard, I've got to say that personally I find quite a bit of appeal with Overcharge, if only because some of these classic kind of cartoony decos or classic toy decos or whatever else, I've seen so much of them that actually the weird and wonderful colours, the slightly more unusual stuff, sort of appeals to me a bit at the moment, you know? So I find Overcharge that little bit more interesting, even if I do really like the Blitzwing option as well. Anyway, let's talk accessories, and like Blitzwing, this guy comes with a rather bizarre pair of red Hulk hands, I think is probably the only way to describe them, and they're just so bizarre. Like, I remember when Blitzwing was first announced and you had people wondering if these were going to be the fists for Legacy Menasor or something like that, and obviously that turned out to not be the case, but it sort of leaves these as a bit like, what are they? No one really knows. Anyway, they feature 2 thumbs in a bit of a weird move, and you can kind of articulate the fingers like so. And the way these work is pretty straightforward. You just essentially peg them over the existing fists on the toy, and then they kind of sit like that, and I guess they're kind of like energy weapons or something. I don't really know. It's not explained, and it feels like a concept that was kind of created maybe for wider use in Legacy or whatever at some point, and then just kind of abandoned. I gotta say though, I don't mind it too much, honestly. I feel like it's the kind of thing that kids can have a little bit of fun with, and I kind of think it works a little bit better on Overcharge than it does on Blitzwing, maybe, because at least this is a sort of original character and you can kind of work it into your headcanon somehow. I don't know. Now, in terms of other weapons, I really like this sword, as I say. I kind of love the little gradation that's going on with it and this kind of electric blue tip. That's really nice. And he does have this little pair of blasters as well. You get 2 of them, so he can dual wield them if you want. I've always really appreciated on this mold as well how you can store all of that on the backpack. You can fit the 2 guns in on the sides just there, and the sword sort of sticks there, or you can have the sword over here if you want. You've got plenty of options, but it works really well. And just generally, I think he looks really great when he's wielding them and he's all kind of posed up and everything. It's a really nicely articulated robot, a lot of fun to handle. Now, there are some quirks to that. I mean, one thing is these rather chunky hip flaps just there, which kind of fold up and allow their hips to kind of have a lot of range of motion, but they look a little bit clunky and awkward to my eye. Not too bad, but it's a thing. Weirdly, in this case, because of the inherent Blitzwing design, you also get these kind of shoulder flaps just there, which allow the arms to kind of move forward. So that is, again, a bit of an oddity. Kind of takes a minute to get used to, but it works well enough. Fair to say, you also have a lot of inherent back kibble going on here as well, which all kind of moves a little bit and needs repositioning occasionally, but that's fine. It's a small thing as well, but I do wish the ankle tilt was a little bit more forgiving, because it's very much no ankle tilt, 45-degree angle, or 90-degree angle. It just could be a little bit better. And whilst it's nice that they included these flaps to cover up the hollow arms, I so wish they actually pegged in or tabbed into something, because they just kind of slide around a little bit. That's kind of annoying. But you know, a few quirks aside on what is an inherently quirky design anyway, and actually, as I say, is a lot of fun to pick up and pose, and it's got all the articulation you could really want, so I've got no major grumbles there. Also fair to say that given the central idea of the current generation's line is to kind of mix and match with lots of weird and wonderful different universes, I think Overcharge fits in pretty well with that. As an update of something that we've never had, bar the original, I'm all for it personally. Of course, that's really only half the story, as this guy does pack in 2 transformations, and this is really where you start to see the kind of money's worth of this being a leader class mold, which is slightly controversial given the size of it, but they do pack in a lot under the bonnet, as we're going to see. Now, we're going to get him into tank mode first. You want to start off with these little flaps on the arms and then just fold the hands in like so. You can then fold this whole back section on the arm around and then fold that flap up to there, and then that just kind of slots into the side of the shoulder. Next, you want to focus on the legs, and the first thing to do is to fold those little fins just down like so, and then that enables you to collapse the feet. And with that done on both sides, you can then come around to the back and just untab that wing section there, which gives you the clearance needed to collapse these legs down like so. It just comes all the way in, and if you get everything lined up nice, which can be a little bit fiddly to do, you should just be able to tab that wing back in on the top, there we go, and then collapse that down. And with both legs done, they simply meet in the middle and click together. Next, you have what I think is one of the coolest bits of this transformation, which is untabbing the chest and just kind of folding that back over there like so, and then that enables you to bring this whole back bit round and down like that. With that out of the way, it means that you can bring that chest panel down, rotate the head around, and then just fold that whole panel around like so, and then collapse that back down. Meanwhile, if you come around to the back here again, then that will just tab in like so, and then this chest panel piece just locks in, tabs right there like that. Pretty solid. Next, you want to start bringing that turret section slightly forward, and then that just gives you the clearance needed to get at these side sections, and they're kind of on a double hinge, so they just come all the way out like so, and then fold them down. And then coming to the underneath, you want to lock that into the side of the arm, and then that just tabs in at the back there into that side fin. You can then take this whole piece just there and fold it around to make the tank tread like so, and then that fin just folds in underneath. You can then finish moving the turret section into place, just rotate that all the way around. You've got this little panel just on top there, which if you can get it open, you can then just fold the turret all the way out like so, and just close that back up. And then voila, you have one tank mode, and I absolutely love that transformation. I think it's really fun, really repeatable, and it's very satisfying as well, how it all tabs together. Really nice. The resulting tank mode is one that seems to cause quite a bit of controversy, but for better or for worse, I actually quite like it. I think it looks decent, particularly, can I say, in these kind of military green colours. Like, you could argue that this is where Overcharge really comes into his own, because that green just works so well. And you know, the silver, which is still really nice to see, is not so uniform now, it's like a little bit more broken up. So overall, a really great job here, but there are some oddities all the same, including this little thing. Yes, anybody that's seen the Generation 1 cartoon will know why this is here. It's because it was present on Blitzwing's original animation model, and it's sort of taken from the toy, but it's also a bit of a factual error. You see, if you come to that original design, and yes, this is Overcharge, of course, you can see that there it is. This is what the cartoon animators were taking inspiration from, except in a real goof, that's not how this toy is supposed to go, because that's actually the correct orientation on the original toy. So yeah, you still get the nose cone at the back there, which is all too obvious, but the front is pretty clean actually, and that's how it was always supposed to be. But the cartoon animators got the tank the wrong way round, and this bit ended up at the front. So it's sort of wild that, you know, 40 years later or whatever it is, we end up with toys that now reference what was essentially an animation error for the sake of accuracy. For better or for worse, there it is. I gotta say, it does look a little bit weird. It's not my favourite thing. I kind of wish they hadn't done that, even though I get why they have, if that makes sense. And look, you can technically flick the turret round and kind of recreate the original toy in a sort of way, except this is very obviously the back now. Like, that doesn't really work, to be honest. Just one of those real WTF moments in Transformers history in a way, and whilst it certainly doesn't kill this tank mode by any means, it is just one of those oddities that you've really got to kind of accept, I suppose. Whether you do or not is up to you. Overall though, I can't deny that I really like the tank mode on the Legacy toy. I mean, it would have been lovely to see the gold chrome of the original recreated, but I get why they've not done that. That's something that you only really get on HasLabs these days, unfortunately. But you know, this is a really solid, really chunky, really appealing tank mode. Yes, it's got a couple of gaps and things in there if you go looking for them, but by and large, I think it kind of works. It also rolls really nice thanks to some little wheels on the underneath of the treads, and you can have great fun positioning the tank turret however you wish, or by pegging in all of the weapons on the little ports for some additional arsenal as well. You can also use those weird Hulk hands on the tank mode by separating them into two parts and then reconnecting them on the inside like so, and then they have these little tabs that just go onto the side of the tank turret and they just clip in like that. And I don't know what to tell you, I get that it looks a little bit like Mickey Mouse's somehow, but you know what, I think this is kind of fun. I'm sort of weirdly into it, you know? Again, it's going to be a straight up choice whether you prefer this version or Blitzwing in terms of the colour scheme, but for what it's worth, they do look quite different here. I think it's a shame to say that that little cockpit section arguably looks a little bit more obvious on Overcharge, but you know, either way, these are two great options, and I definitely like the green. Anyway, it's time to look at the jet mode, and of course, to get there, you've got to undo some of the transformation that we've done previously, including that tank turret bit. Same goes for the tank treads, which just fold back over like so. Then you want to unpeg this whole section from the side and fold that back up into place just there. Next, you need to undo all of the tabs on the main body and kind of bring all of this stuff out the way to get to the wings. And then you will need to separate the legs and just fold this little fin out of the way, which just gives you the clearance that you need in order to fold the wings out from the sides. And with that done on both sides, you can tab the legs back together. Next, you have the really unusual move of folding down the entire arm section on this massive hinge just there, and that should just kind of tab in at the side and kind of sit into place. Still on the underneath, then you can just fold that little cockpit section up and get the nose cone out, and then just fold that around into place and collapse that back. And on the other side, you can fold these wing sections out at the front like that to kind of complete the silhouette. And this next section's really odd because you have what is essentially a very clean and tidy looking jet just there, but you still have all of this bump underneath. So you just need to kind of fold this up into place. That front chest panel bit just kind of tabs in there at the front like so. And same as before, you just want to tab those bits in at the sides, at the back of the legs. But now these sections with the treads will also tab in to the top of the arms. You can then fold these fake fins in because they're not anything in the jet mode, weirdly, and then fold this whole turret section back into place. And you may find it easier to do during transformation, but there is a bit of landing gear that can pop out just there as well. All of which leaves us with this. Honestly, it's not the most aerodynamic jet form that you've ever seen in your life, right? Because of all of this bump underneath, so much kibble going on. It's an oddity. Like, when I first saw this, I can't deny that it kind of gave me the vibe of, like, you know when a dog scratches its ass by, like, dragging it along the floor? Like, I don't know. I have warmed up on it a bit since, I must admit. But there's little denying that it's a very weird mode. I mean, for one thing, it looks great from the top, but it's when you flip it over that it starts to kind of fall apart a little bit, especially because you've got stuff like the faux cockpit on the underneath here as well, and the very obvious tank turret, and the faux wings, and whatever else. So So a definite oddity. In some ways though, that does kind of make it the spiritual successor of the original toy, because that classic Blitzwing design always had a lot of kibble as well. Admittedly, the G1 toy is a bit cleaner, but the animation models certainly followed through with all of that kibble as well, so that's just kind of what you're seeing here, I suppose. And for what it's worth, I don't mind all of this, in that it's a little bit unfortunate, but it does have to go somewhere as well, right? It's just a real oddity, because what you essentially end up with is a really nice jet mode sat on top of a bunch of tank kibble. Like it's just hanging underneath, you know? Can't deny though, I love the finish on this thing and the kind of colours used. I really like that kind of like shiny grey silver thing going on. That looks really nice here with the red of the canopy, the blue cockpit, the little Decepticon emblems, the yellow stripe. That all adds up really nicely, to the point where I don't mind telling you that I think this jet mode is so much nicer than Blitzwing. I just think the colour scheme brings it all together that much better. I think the green parts being the kind of kibble helps to hide it a little bit visually, whereas on Blitzwing it's the lighter colour, which is the kibble, so it kind of draws your eye a little bit more. And I just love the kind of combination of the blue, the silver, the yellow. It just sings to me. I don't know, it's just an inherently ridiculous mode, and you can't kind of deny that, but this is about the best it's ever going to look, I think, and I reckon that deserves some props, you know. Now again, you can actually add in the weapons under the wings. They actually tab in on the sides, not under the wings themselves, which is a little bit strange, but it works. And honestly, I think as third modes go, this could be a lot worse, right? Like, triple changes always have some degree of compromise in them, and you know, I have seen people kind of removing the kibble underneath, like popping pins and stuff to do that, so that is an option if you want it. It's not something I'm going to do, but by and large, I think this is just kind of a fun third mode in what is otherwise a very impressive toy. And on that basis, you know, I really don't have too many grumbles about old Legacy Overcharge here. You know, I think the colour scheme is really interesting. They've done something a little bit different with it, and for my money, this is absolutely the one to get over Blitzwing. I don't mind saying that. I prefer this, and so on that basis, for me, it's got to be a toot. Once again, a big thank you to Transforverse.eu for making this review possible. You'll find an affiliate link to their site in the description below, and you should absolutely go and check them out if you live in Europe, but otherwise, that's it from me. So have a great rest of your day, DTFN.